Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandy. Back on another Card Fight Vanguard deck performance. If you enjoyed them, like, comment, subscribe, and one star, shall we? This time we are covering Stoicheia set 7 for Magnolia. All around, Magnolia is that interesting deck, I gotta say, that where you get the attacks, they've gotten, they wanted to get that grade 4, then we got reasons to come back to Persona Rides, and I was like, hell yeah, we got reason to come back to Persona Rides, and then for some reason, even though I've been a big advocate of running the Persona Rides in the grade 4 builds, for some reason I just don't get to Persona Ride. Then again, Persona Riding yesterday was also the reason I won a game, and I actually, well not in Magnolia, but in a different deck, and I top decked into the Persona Ride when I really needed it, so yeah, that aside, all around, Stoicheia, just interesting, so let's go ahead and go over Magnolia, and we'll see what we have here. I'm pretty sure my build both differs and agrees with some other people's lineups. Then we have, so first we have our starter in Sylvan Beast Lelote. I am so tired right now, my mind is like in 20 different places. So grid 0 boost, 5k, show 6k base, auto run upon if you win second, draw a card. Standard starter, nothing special about it, it's just if you win second, you draw a card. Really can be any starter, especially because none of the ride lines specifically requires a Lelote, though of course, as per usual, because this is a archetypal deck, we're running the whole archetype, meaning we're running the ride line with it, and that means Lelote gets to be here. Also, just Lelote's cute, so why the hell not? So, Lelote is the starter here. Then we have our Overtrigger in Source Dragon Deity of Blessings Blessfavor, or as I like to call it, Everything Bagel. So grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, Overtrigger, you may have one Overtrigger in your deck. Reveals a trigger, draw a card, move the card, draw a card, choose one of plus movement for the turn, and if you revealed it during your drive check, activate additional effect, which is draw a card, choose one of your units, gets plus 1 crit for the turn, or everyone gets plus 10, and if your damage zone has the same number of cards in your opponent's or more, choose a card from damage zone, heal it. AKA, literally do every single trigger. So if you drive check this, you draw 2 cards, someone gets 1,000,000, you get 1 crit to someone, your whole front row gets plus 10, and you get to heal a card. If this was Leonor, this would be instant death for my opponent, because quite literally I'd sack it on the first grade 3 turn while they're at grade 2, and we probably could just scoop right then and there, because while they'll survive this turn guaranteed, they're not surviving the next turn. So all around, having Blessfavor, as cheap as it feels to sack it, it feels fun doing all the little effects at once and just see your opponent's soul leave their eyes as you're like, yes, so I'm not just done, I keep drawing, I keep getting power. You, at any point, just scoop and stop me, and then they just willingly choose not to, and then they realize next turn they're dead anyways. So, all around Blessfavor as kind of proves the point that overs are a little bit too good for what they are. It's one of the, in my opinion, one of the more fun overs to see. So, yeah, Blessfavor, why not? Then we have our normal triggers, 3 copies of Sylvan Beast Jackalope, grade 0 boost and K shield, 5k power. I literally just said at the starter we run the whole archetype, so screw the effect triggers, none of them have Sylvan Beast in their names, so yeah. Also, this deck doesn't need the effect triggers because it still wins anyways. So 3 Jackalope, 4 Valen, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Honestly, even if it wasn't for the effect triggers, even if the effect triggers did have Sylvan Beast, I might still run Valen over the front trigger one just because, I don't know, I really like when cards start with the letter V, so simply because his name is Valen, I would probably still run him over the effect front. And then we have our 4 draws in Sylvan Beast Planar, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k power. Honestly, the card that shows up when I need ride deck discard fodder, so yeah, Planar, always there when I need him. So cool, 4 of, and then we have our 4 heals in Sylvan Beast Latarog. Even if it wasn't for the effect heal, even if it wasn't for the Sylvan Beast thing, I still wouldn't run the effect heals because we all know why at this point. They're just too gimmicky for my opinion, and I just don't like relying on them because there are those times where they will screw you over more than help you, even in the matchups that they're supposed to help you in. As you can see, we run more fronts and draws than crits, just because I don't think this deck needs crits. I like having the pressure with the front in the occasions that I'm not doing the Persona Ride shenanigans with, and I like having draws just to increase my hand cards, and then crits just... I don't really need to worry about crits. I sack them enough, surprising. If it's in the situation, if I want to sack a crit, I'll sack a crit. That's how it's always been. If I feel like sacking a crit today, I'll sack a crit, but otherwise it just kind of stays in the deck. So yeah, that's our trigger lineup. And we have our last grade 0, and that's our normal order in Wild Intelligence. Grade 0 boost, normal order played by card busting 1, discard top 3, show up to 1 card from among them with the same grade as a Vanguard or lower, call it to rear guard, not from among the mill cards, but from the drop zone. So it could be within the top 3, but it could also just be any cards in drop zones anyway, call it to rear guard. And if your Vanguard is Sylvan Beast King Magnolia specifically, choose up to 2 cards instead of 1. Okay, I love this order. I remember back in set 2 and set 3, this thing was the most prominent card in my deck simply because I would draw into it as much as physically possible, and I would always be able to play it. But for some reason in set 4 and set 4 to 6, or set 4 to now actually, because I just remember this is set 7, I have not been able to draw this as easily, and for some reason I play it less. It's not in the sense that, like, oh, counterblast is an issue. It's just the fact that I just don't draw into it. So it's sad. Or draw into it when it's useful. I can't use Wild Intelligence as much as I like to. I still run it because I know it will be useful. It's the same hope that I have for, like, that one card from my Keter Saint Bastion that I, for some reason, had stupid amounts of hope for. Like, even then, I still know Wild Intelligence is good, because when I do get to use it, it does what it does best. But, like, I don't know. I just have to, like, wait it out. There are games where it will be useful, and there are games where it's not. I still like it, though. It has proven that it's worth running 2 of. Then we have our next grade 1, or first grade 1 actually. That's 3 copies of Sylvan Horn Beast Serral, aka in terms of art, my favorite Sylvan Horn Beast hands down. In terms of skill, one of my favorites, and yet the one that screws me over the most. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, aka base, automatically placed on rear from your deck or hand. I did not realize he works from deck. If you have a Vanguard with Sylvan Horn Beast in its card name, by Soul Blasting 1, look at top 5, choose to 1 Magnolia from among them, or you put it to hand and shuffle your deck. Or as I like to call it, when I place it from hand, because I don't think it can be placed from deck, I mean, not like it matters, I wouldn't have been able to call it from deck anyways, Soul Blast 1, and then just shuffle the top 5. Because quite literally, it never shows a Maggie. There was one time where I got a Maggie off, and it was Elder, and that was it. And I never got a Maggie again. And then continuous rear guard. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Magnolia, it's card name, your Persona writing power increase the back variants as well. So Graham Grace before Graham Grace. I love that skill. And the second I saw it, I was so hyped I put it into my deck immediately, and it was one of the few times recently that I went right into tabletop to go put a card in there. And of course, Serral, despite being a card I really like, doesn't work for me, as in he'll get in the deck, or like he'll get on board, and then the second he gets on board, the turn before I Persona Ride, he dies, or as long as he's on board, I don't draw Persona Rides. That's how his skill works with me. It's either I don't get Persona Rides and he gets to stay on the board the whole game, or I do get Persona Rides, but then the turn after I get one into my hand, he dies immediately. I'm not allowed to be happy with him, which sucks, but, you know, it's just how it is. I have faith that one day it will work, and then I can just abuse the fuck out of it, but, you know, his search doesn't like me, and neither does his second skill, but I run him because I'm hyped about it, and I like it a lot, and I don't care how many times I have to keep attempting it. At some point, I'll succeed, and at some point, I'll be able to beat the shit out of anyone who tries me. So 3 of Serral gets that free Persona right to the back row, and not to mention gets the search. Even if neither end up working out for me, it's still a nice card to have, so 3 of. Then we have 4 PGs in Planar Prevent, Dragon Grade 1 Boost, 0 Shield, 6k base, contains Sentinel, you have 4 on in deck, and auto is put on Guard Circle. Choose your music to paint in battle, and if your hand is true, more cards you cover from hand, discard it. Standard PG, nothing special about it. Basically, that means when this and only other card in your hand would be placed on Guard Circle, you do not have to discard, and that's pretty amazing because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game and not have to suffer from it, which can work out, especially in the sense that you know your luck's going to be a little bit shitty that game and you chose to like call every single aggressive card in your hand and your opponent nukes your entire board, and basically you did that for no apparent reason, or maybe they just survive your inherent rush, and then Planar Prevent comes in and then prevents you from dying because you dropped quite literally every hand card on an attack. Yes, this has happened once, and it was very funny seeing how the fact I survived that turn and then proceeded to top deck. I mean, I didn't win, but it was just a funny that I survived the turn top deck. So all around, Planar Prevent, just a nice grade 1 to have. The PG definitely helps out. He shows up when I need him to. That's actually the one deck where he shows up when I need him to and not just when I feel like it or when he feels like it. So full of Planar Prevent, just a good PG to have. I wish he was a Sylvan Horn Beast for the name, but he's still good. Then we have our last grade 1 in the ride deck, or last grade 1 in general, which is the grade 1 of the ride deck, and that is Sylvan Horn Beast Charis. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, all was wrote upon by Sylvan Horn Beast Lattice. You may reveal the top card of your deck, and if it was a grade 2 or less unit card, call it to rear guard, and if it wasn't, put it to soul. Okay, all around, I like the skill a lot, or I do like that skill, it's just that it screws me over just like it does with Serral, because the amount of times I have sent a Persona Ride to soul from this. I'm starting to think it's not just a coincidence. I'm just starting to believe that this is just how the deck works. I'm not allowed to Persona Ride. Because the amount of times I hit one off from this, or just the amount of times I'll hit a grade 4 from this in general. Basically, the amount of times I'll hit something I don't want in Soul is just, I mean, all around, his skill's fine because it gets you a free call if you see a grade 2 or less. There was one time where I got a grade 2 off this, and that was the easiest game I've ever played, because I won on grade 3 turn, first grade 3 turn. But then the second, like every other time, it's either a trigger, specifically the draw trigger, or a crit, or it's a freaking mag. One of the two. Most of the time it's the Persona Ride, but on occasion it's Elder. But god damn it. It always does this to me, and I don't know why. And I can use back or rear guard center. During the battle, he attacked, he gets +5. So, you know, not a horrible skill, because combined with Elder, that's a free call who's going to be at 18. And there have been games where I had needed to rely on that, and honestly, it's not that bad because I do end up using that, relying on that for either Counter Blast or Soul Blast of other cards, or just having like an extra rear guard because maybe I was just Soul Blasting everything else out because I know it's going to go Soul Blast heavy that game. All around, Charis is a nice card that I like to have just because, like, in the end game, he might be the reason I win thanks to Elder's skill, or at least in the early game, if he does end up freaking pulling out a grade 2 from his skill, on the rare occasion that it is, it's going to be the easiest game I ever played because it's an instant win from there. So one of Charis in the ride deck never works out for me, just like Cyril, but yeah, it's just how basically this deck doesn't work out for me, yet somehow I'm able to win it because I just refuse to fall to it. So one of Charis in the ride deck, none in the main deck because you really don't need it because you can just call it from Soul via Elder. And then move on to our grade 2s. 2 copies of straight up my least favorite grade 2 in this deck, but there was no other Sylvan Horn Beast I liked that I wanted to run, so I just run this one instead, and that is Sylvan Horn Beast Gabregg. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear. When your other units ain't calm as it attacks, by Soul Blasting 1, he gets +10 for the turn. Choose all of your opponent's rear guards, and for that battle, he attacks. Your opponent cannot call a card from hand to guard circle of the chosen grades. So, technically, if your opponent had a grade 0, 1, 2, and 3 on their board, and somehow grade 4, your opponent is not guarding Gabregg's attack. And the best part is he works with whatever unit attacks in the same column. So it can be a rear guard, it can be a vanguard. Gabregg thankfully does not have to be in the back row to do this. So all around an amazing card that I like to have. Is just that him being a Soul Blaster is not nice, and also this is more my fault than anything else's, but because every other card in this deck has a back row specific skill, I think that he involves the back row, so I constantly call him to back, and then it fucks over my entire game plan. Or to be more exact, my hand has a lot of back row attackers, and I feel like he's a back row attacker, so I call him instead for guard restricting, and then the following turn I realize that while I'm waiting for my opponent to make the move, I realize that, fuck, he can work in the front row, and then I just proceed to learn that for next turn, and then he dies within 5 seconds of me having this realization. So 2 copies of Gabregg. He does work when I actually do use him properly, because he does get rid of, or actually it's the 10k that does work, not the guarding restricting, but the 10k is nice to have. The guard restrict never really does anything, because most of the time when I use him, my opponent's board is empty, but he's still a good card, and he doesn't restrict the opponent to be at grade 3 to do it. Then we have 2 copies of Sylvan Horn Beast Danny Maru. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Okay, for all of you that say I'm stupid for running this, I want to let this be clear now. This thing, even in set 4, since it's been released, has been the MVP of my deck. More than Gun and Sola has. Not because Gun and Sola is not at 4 in this deck, because I do see him enough to warrant him being the main card, but because when I'm on grade 3, this thing turns my grade 3 turn into some of the stupidest BS I've ever seen. So, auto when it's placed on rear, if you have a Vanguard with Sylvan Horn Beast King Magnolia in its card name, Soul Blast 1, or not in its card name, as its name, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your rear guards until end of turn it can attack from back row, and it gets +5. So, on the bright side, it can pick itself. But on the other side, it can pick another unit, and then you can Magnolia this thing, and then his other skill being auto rear, when this unit is chosen by Vanguard's ability, gets +5 for the turn. So, you know, if it's chosen by Mag's ability, it's a 20k. All around pretty nice. It doesn't really do much on Elder, but if you're just stuck on Sylvan Horn Beast King, it's not that bad. This is also why Wild Intelligence is in here, because it helps combo, and that's why Wild Intelligence, I have a lot of faith in, because when I used to pull it a lot, I would just plow out the field with Danny Marus. I remember like the 3rd game I played with my set 2 Magnolia deck, I got 3 Danny Marus out in the back row immediately, and it was so funny. And then I got a Gun and Sola too, so I gave one of the Danny Marus back row attack, and then I gave Gun and Sola back row attack from the other, and then I don't know where the other 5k went from the other Danny Maru, and then Mag swung, and then the other Danny Maru got back row attack. Basically, shit happened. Oh wait, that's where they went. 2 of the Danny Marus got back row attack. Yeah, okay, anyways. Point is, stupidity at its finest, and it's just funny to pull it off. I like how Danny Maru just allows me to do a lot of shenanigans in the early grade 3 turns and helps me apply a little bit of pressure, because honestly, that pressure does come in handy, because I don't have soul boss problems, I just have counter boss problems, so being able to work without counter boss is pretty nice. So 2 of Danny Maru. He's just nice to have, and he does end up working out in the early game grade 3 when I need him to. Then we have 3 copies of Sylvan Horn Beast Panthoro, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k, 9k base. Auto was placed on rear Soul Boss 1, choose a Sylvan Horn Beast Panthoro from your drop zone, call it to an open rear guard circle, and auto rear when this unit attacks. If your Vanguard is Magnolia's card name, gets +5 for the battle. Again, this is another card that it will either work or it won't, and what I mean by this is either I will see absolutely none of it outside of one that ends up in the damage zone, or I will see all of them within grade 3 turn. Before first grade 3 turn. That's how this deck works. It's either it will do one or the other, and typically it's the other, where the other is the one that fucks me. But Panthora all around is nice, because when I do get to use him, he does get to advance my board ever so slightly, and not to mention he's just an instant 14k for the battle, and combine it with Elder and or Sylvan Hornbeast King, he's just a 19k. So all around, I like Panthora a lot. Gets numbers, gets a board advancement, does what he does when I need him to, so 3 of Panthora, just wish he showed up more. Then again, the whole point of this deck is just not to show up for me, and then I just have to deal with it, so I don't really see the argument point of here. And then we have 4 copies of Sylvan Hornbeast Alpin, who, even though I run at 4, I'm only allowed to see 1 apparently. Grade 2 and a 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear when this unit attacks a Vanguard. If you have a Vanguard of Magnolia in its card name, works for both. He gets +5 for the battle, and then for every two of your grade 2 or greater rear guards, including himself, or units. So basically, if your whole board is grade 2 or greater, he gets +15, which is nice. And then if this unit got +10 or more by this effect, at the end of the battle, bind this unit, or is it specifically +10? I assume it's +10 or more. See, now I'm paranoid because I pulled this right from the fandom, but now I'm confused. But I'm pretty sure it's 10 or more. But if it got 10 by this effect, bind this unit, countercharge 1, soul charge 1. So all around, good. You can't loop it via calling it back from other skills. So it's an instant bind, and it's the countercharge 1, soul charge 1. Really helpful. I like how the fact it gets countercharge, because that's mainly my main problem with Magnolia. Works on both Magnolia and Magnolia Elder. So I like him. I wish I could use more of him and not just have 1 copy and then just get the others either damage checked or stay at bottom for whatever reason. So 4 of Alpin, go to grade 2, same thing with everything else in this deck. Can they please work for me? The answer to that question is a blatant no, but it's at least worth trying to ask it. He does do good in the time where I do get to call one of them, because the 15k actually helps, and the countercharge 1, soul charge 1 tends to allow me to abuse the fuck out of gun and soul play. So 4 of Alpin. Then we have 4 copies of Sylvan Hornbeast Gun and Soul. Really? You're at 4? I thought I ran this at 3. For the longest time, I swear this was at 3. Okay, anyways, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, auto back or rear guard center, or auto back or rear guard in general. Sorry, my mind's everywhere right now. When this unit attacks into anything, counterboss 1, choose one of your other rear guards, and it gets +power, or this unit's power to the end of the battle. Increases power at the time. So essentially what you do is when you do your triple drive, if you have 3 counterboss available, every trigger you goes to 1 gun and soul on your board. Doesn't matter if you have 2, you put it on a single gun and soul, and then you start swinging for game, because gun and soul will make whatever boost bigger. And honestly, gun and soul gets stupid, because there was a game where I had 3 gun and souls in the back row. I do not need to explain what happened. You can all figure out what occurred from here. And I pulled 2 triggers, by the way. I believe one of them was a crit that went on mag. The attack was healed out anyways, but one was a crit that went on mag, and then the other one was a draw trigger that went onto the back row. So yeah, gun and sola, very deadly. If there's 3 of them, don't fuck with them. They will kill you in a heartbeat. Hug time, and that hug time will kill you. 4 of. It's just good. Gets big-ass numbers. Then we have our last grade 2, and that's the grade 2 of the Rideline. That was 1 copy of Sylvan Hornbeast Lattice. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Auto is wrote upon by Sylvan Hornbeast King Magnolia. By soul blasting more, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a unit card, you call it to rear guard, and if it's not, put it to hand. Again, I say, like how Charis has made me see Persona Rides, this has just made me see mags in general. At this point, I cannot recall a time where this has not just given me a flat mag. Whether it was Elder or the grade 3, I don't know why this deck just doesn't want me to be happy. It just doesn't. I mean, I'll get Elder in my hand relatively quickly, but, doesn't want me to be happy. It wants me to suffer while I play this deck. Either way, it works. It gets a rear guard, or it gets a hand card, and then auto back or rear guard when it attacks a Vanguard. Soul Blast 1, it gets +10 for the battle. So great if you have soul after using Elder, which is a rare occurrence for me, because I just like to spam soul for everything else, specifically Danny Maru. Then the 10k doesn't really come in handy, but especially because the only soul I have left is a regular Magnolia, and that's kind of what I'm using for Elder. So that's always the situation, but Lattice gets the +10 if I do really have the soul extra for him, meaning as a 25k swinger, which isn't that bad. So I like the fact that he can be a little bit more aggressive with the turn. And all around, just a nice grade 2 to have. One of in the ride deck, you really need none in the main deck, because you're just going to call it via Elder. And then we have our grade 3s. 2 of in the main deck, 1 copy in the right deck of Sylvan, Horn, Beast, King, Magnolia, Grade 3 Trinity Persona, 13k base. Auto advantage, at the end of the battle, this unit attacked by counterblasting 1, choose one of your rear guards till end of turn. It can attack from back row and it gets +5, and if you Persona route, you choose 3 rear guards instead of 1. Okay, so again I say, Gun and Soul of Madness, if you have 3 of these, or if you Persona road, and the amount of numbers you will hit from it are, funnily enough, insane. All around, it's a good skill because you don't have to give the skill specifically to the back row units. It just gives them back row attack. So if you wanted to, you can give it to a rear guard in your front row and it gets +5. I've done that a few times just because it wouldn't hit because triggers are a thing. Or, you know, you just pick 3 back row tag and then go on the onslaught, and it definitely works with Danimaru, giving the extra 5k. So all around, it's nice to have. And if you combo the Persona Ride skill off with Serral, if you can get it off, that is, then your numbers will reach pretty decent things, and you'll probably be able to beat the shit out of your opponent, especially if one of the things in your back row is a Gun and Soul. So all around, decent card. I like having the Persona Ride as a possible option, and I just like having the ability to go into King whenever I feel like it's more of my deck can be valuable, because the deck still works on both Elder and King. It just, I guess, technically works better on King because it will have everyone's skill go off. So 2 of King in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. And then we have our last card, and that is 4 copies of Sylvan, Horn, Beast, Emperor, Magnolia, Elder. Okay, I don't believe that, because I feel like that's more than 50, but okay. Anyways, grade 4, triple drive, 13 cubits. Actually, no, we're doing the counting on screen. 4, 7, 8, 12, 16, 19, 21, 23, 24, 28, 31. Oh, shit, that is... Okay, then never mind. Okay, anyways, back to Elder. Auto is placed on Vanguard. Choose a card from your soul, and you may call it to rear guard. Cool. You get that free soul, or you get that free call. So, you know, typically that's a Charis for me, but on occasions I will call Lattice if I have the extra soul for it. And then continues Vanguard. If you have 1 or more cards in your soul or on your rear guard with Magnolia's card name is the ability I always forget about, because I always forget it can be on rear. All your rear guards can attack and intercept from the back row and get +5k power. That intercept ability never does it for me, because typically the turn I ride Elder is the turn I have to win. Or, like, even if it's not the turn I win, it's the turn I basically won, because what happens is Elder pushes my opponent's hand to nothing, to the point where intercepting from the back row is not important, because I'm probably at 3 damage and my opponent probably has, no rear guards to, no to 2 rear guards at most, and typically those are boosters, and then their hand cards are between 1 and 3. So yeah, I never really need to worry about the intercept part with Elder, but nice that you can intercept from back row with them. The 5k is amazing because it also works during both players' turns, meaning that your rear guards are harder to hit, and just being able to get a free 6 attacks just by riding into Elder and constantly having that ability is amazing as well, because it also applies to triggers. Now, his ability is great and all. I like it. My only downside is, or my only hate towards it, is that my favorite grade 2 cannot work with him, because none of its abilities can work with it, because, you know, one of them is restricted to the grade 3 and the other one has to be chosen by Vanguard abilities, and this is not choose by any means. So sadly, my favorite grade 2 does not work with him, but hey, Elder's all around still good. Danimaru does his work when I'm on King, and then Emperor just kind of wraps up the game on his own accord. So yeah, Floor of Emperor, just cool, big, furry, dragon-looking thing. And without further ado, I'm going to end it here. All around, this deck is, even though it's very much against me and it's more like an uphill battle for me because it can only get better from here, it's fun to play. Even though I constantly lose Persona Rides and constantly lose Elders and basically am not allowed to play the way I want to because the deck just refuses to let me, it is fun getting to call rear guards and pump them up with Gun and Sola, beyond Gun and Sola, beyond Gun and Sola, and then proceed just to swing with an army of back row units, get to Elder, wipe out their hand, and pretty much sit high and mighty while I wait for them to either just scoop or slowly try to kill me, which isn't going to work because they're dead next turn anyways. So, without further ado, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join Discord, follow Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.